me tell y'all, we were
Uh-oh.
finishing up our master's program, and this man sits here and tells me, yeah, after I get my PhD, I think I'm just going to go ahead and go to med school. And y'all, I looked at him and I was like, are you crazy? Like, What's up, everybody? It's Jess. So I am super excited to be here and be talking with you all today. I am getting ready to have a special guest join in and chat with us about his experience in IO psychology. I'll let him introduce himself in a second. Well, I'll introduce him in a second when he joins on the call. But I am just, the goal of this is to kind of show you all the unique journeys that people have in IO Psych, right? Everyone has something unique that brings them to it, and how their journeys manifest as they go through it looks different, because it does. And so my goal with this series is to start bringing in more people with just unique backgrounds, and then explore their different journeys and where they went with their career with IO Psych. So this is the start one of it. I hope you all enjoy it. And, I hope my goal is to bring more people on to share their experiences with you all. And you get to know other people in the field. And starting off with this one particular person, very social person, very open. So you will learn a lot, I would hope. But yeah, so thank you all for watching, and let's get into this video. Hi, everyone. So I want to introduce you all to Ricardo Brooks, better known as Rico. He is my esteemed peer. He is also in a PhD program at Albany. What is it? Is it called SUNY?
Yeah.
Albany, right? Yeah, I don't know the lingo of it. Rico and I attended Missouri State University together. We were both in that master's program there, and we developed a really great friendship. And I have him here today to kind of just interview and get his experiences. His experiences in IO psychology is a bit different than mine. It's very unique, and I think he has some great things to share with you all. He has also just proposed his dissertation, so he is getting ready to start a journey into that. I'm excited to hear about that. I'll let him talk to that in a second. But yeah, like I said, he's here today to just discuss his experiences, how he got into IO psychology, what it was like for him, the challenges, the barriers he faced, the great highs he's had, and share that with you all today and offer some advice towards the end. So I'm going to start out with you, Rico, and just, tell a little bit to the people listening, who you are, where you're from, what was life like prior to IO psychology?
All right. Thank you for the wonderful introduction, Jess. So, a little bit about myself. My folks and I are from Mississippi, and I've spent another considerable amount of time in the Midwest as well. So, I kind of bounce between Mississippi and Illinois/Missouri. So, if people are familiar with St. Louis, or at least know what the Arch is, that's what we're talking about. 'Cause if I say Illinois, nobody's gonna know what that is.
Yeah,
I'm like, what?
unless you say
Illinois?
Chicago, but
Actually, yeah, they might have said Chicago. Yeah,
yeah,
but Chicago is like 3 or 4 hours away from St. Louis.
exactly.
But either way, but I went to high school in O'Fallon, Illinois, and then I transitioned to St. Louis University for undergrad. And then from there, as Jess said, went to Missouri State, did our master's together, went to Albany, New York, and I'm not from here, but the Northeast is cool. Northeast is cool. I can see myself here long term. So
Really? It's a little too
yeah,
cold.
yeah, yeah. When winter lasts 5 or 6 months, you can miss me with that. But
Yeah.
the non-cold season is decent because it doesn't snow that much. It's just the cold lingers, you know?
Yeah, but you won't be there much longer though, right? You're heading somewhere else more warm.
Yeah, that's
Is
true.
it-
I'm
Can you
relocating
announce it
to,
yet, or
I think we can. Yeah, sure. Why not?
are you
So
sure?
I'm,
Go announce it if you can't, but you can.
yes, be funny. Yeah, so I'll be starting a postdoc at the University of Texas, Arlington, starting September 1st.
Texas.
Yes. So moving to Texas, at least for a year. And I'll be, let me see, so I leave here August 9th, because I have to go to AOM, Academy of Management, for those who are not familiar. So if you're coming from the psychology side of things, our main annual conference is Society of Industrial Organizational Psychology, Psych for short. For more of the business, organizational behavior management folks, they tend to go to the Academy of Management. So that is in Boston this year, August 4th to 8th. So I'll be there, and then I'll leave to go to Texas.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And your career, aspirations is more so to get into more the business side of like the go ahead, you can talk to it. I won't talk to it, but
Yeah, no, that's a good question though. Yes. So I am trying to shift my way into the OB or management side of things. I have, many colleagues over there, mentors over there, and it just might make more sense with my interest in going academic, which might then pose a question of, what is academia like for IO psychologists? And there's just an interesting transition that's going on right now. I think I'm told that this happens in waves. But traditionally, IO psychologists have gone into application, right? They go into the field, they work with organizations, and then a fewer percentage of us go into academia. Now, academia for IO psychologists is similar to academia for OB and management, business side of things, in terms of what is studied, how much overlap there is between. But it's just more competitive on the business side of things. And, for example, they pay significantly more to do a lot of the same things. I might get dinged for that. Very similar things.
yeah.
Yeah. And so, what we're seeing right now is just that psychology departments are having a little bit more trouble recruiting for, IO psychologists because the pay gap is very apparent. If you are going to you're going to spend 5 or 6 years getting your doctorate and then start out making 70 to 90, or you can start out making, 140 to 70 plus.
Hard decision. Yeah.
It's a hard
It's
decision.
not that hard. It's not that hard. It's not that hard.
Yeah, it's really not. Yeah. But that offers its own challenges because they do, OB and management, they do publish in some different journals. And the way the publication works for OB and management versus IO psychology is different. We have, in the psychology side of things, more flexibility in terms of the journals that count for us for tenure. And the lists for what counts for tenure tends to be a little bit more targeted for the OB and management folks. So it has its own challenges. But
Yeah. Well, before we dive into that, because I do want to circle back to that and then just talk a little bit more about your interest. But before we go there, I'd like to know what drew you to IO psychology. What was that journey like? I mean, now you're kind of pivoting into more business, but you still have the IO in you, so I know you're going to continue that
sure.
on. But
Yeah.
what was that journey like getting to IO? Like, where did you have that moment in that this is it, this is what I want to do?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I, like many of my peers, started undergrad as a major, double major, and something pre-med. Now, granted, it was a reasonable career pursuit. My stepdad, he's in healthcare, so in high school I was in hospitals, I was shadowing, I was doing this, that, and the third with medicine. So, however, I feel like this is very important. So when I was in high school, I took my first psychology class, and I was like, ooh, this right here, yeah, this is it. Now, because I wasn't footing the bill, granted, my scholarships covered majority of, the costs for college. Most parents don't really understand what psychology does other than clinical. Everybody assumes psychology is clinical.
Yeah.
Like when people hear IO psychology, they think you're just doing clinical work
Don't read my
in
mind.
somebody's organization.
Yeah.
And that's not how it works.
Yeah.
But, that's a whole nother conversation. So anyway, long story short is my parents were like, no, stick with the medicine. And I didn't know much better at the time because I didn't really know IO yet. Because IO is not often covered in introductory classes well either, if at all, which is a whole nother issue that hopefully APA or somebody needs to take care of that. But anyway, again, stitch for another time. So in undergrad, I sort of shifted between majors trying to figure things out for myself. And around my last year in undergrad, I circled back to my parents and I was like, look, I'm real good off of everything else, but the psychology thing, this is going to happen. And I did a little bit of my research. I was like, look, here are the options, this is what it looks like. And then they were on board, right? I had a plan. I could explain things to them in a way that they could mostly understand, and it was okay. And so, that was part of my journey, was figuring out what I wanted to do, or at least, finding a way to be able to commit to what I wanted to do or what I found very interesting, which was psychology. Now, once I made that commitment, I took the time to test out the different branches. So, I took some classes in cognitive, clinical, and eventually IO psychology. So I really liked cognitive psychology. In fact, IO psychologists use some of that material, in what we do. One area, or I use a lot of attentional resource stuff from cognitive in my work. So, we're also very interdisciplinary, and we'll probably go over that later in terms of like future directions of IO and all that. But, at the time, I actually didn't want to go academic. And so I kind of veered away from cognitive. And then, I took a couple clinical classes, and I realized that I would just try to be all my clients' friends, and that's just not,
Yeah.
that's not what that is. Like,
No, Rico is super friendly. Like he is like the social butterfly. So I 100% can just envision him trying to be his clients' friends and all of that. So yeah, I
yeah,
think
it's that.
I'm glad you kind of.
Thank you. Yeah, it was a good moment of self-awareness that I had. And so, actually, Jess studied under Dr. Richard Harvey at St. Louis University. And so he was also sort of a mentor for me. And once every like 4-ish years, he's able to teach this application-oriented class on organizational development and change management. So that was my first IO class. And when I took that class, I was like, oh, yeah, okay, this is it. And it was, it was really, and, I was a special case with that because although some classes might have an IO class in undergrad, not even common, I don't think, maybe more common these days just because we're growing as a field. But, that class, as a part of doing that class, we were, lucky enough, blessed enough, however you want to put it, to be able to actually work with organizations. So we went into a nonprofit, I think after school care program, and then an international energy company, and got to do interventions with both, and like go to the sites and meet with people and do all the SME interviews and design assessments. And
You loved
as
it.
just said, I loved it. I'm social too. I was like, hey, look, let me solve all your problems because I'm here
Yeah.
for it. So that was how I made my journey to IO psychology. Yeah.
That's nice.
That one IO class.
Yeah, and it was under Dr. Harvey. It makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Makes a lot of
He's
sense.
also very, and I met with him like last week, I think. And he was just talking about the scientist practitioner model. And so for those of you who don't know, IO psychologists subscribe to the scientist practitioner model in that if you do practice, you still embed, the scientific method within what you do. So, it's data driven and it's robust. And on the flip side of things, we want to be aware of what's going on in the field because we want to be able to research what organizations are actually interested in and what they're doing, right? You don't want to spend 5 or 10 years researching something and no one in the field is using that. Like,
Yeah.
it's just not relevant,
You need useful research that can really help what organizations are doing. I 100% agree with
Right.
that.
So
So,
he hit that back to that, and I was like, yeah, I miss I miss
yeah.
you, Dr. Harvey.
Dr. Harvey is amazing. I mean, hope maybe I'll bring him on here, see if he's open, but oh my gosh, the way his mind works, y'all, is just it blows me out the water every single time. I always learn talking to him. But he's great in his position. But Rico, so that's a very interesting journey. That sounds really good. Like what brought you up, like where it was like that was that moment for you doing that work and again in Dr. Harvey's class. How was it, applying for grad school for you? Was it challenging for you or was it like not, I won't say it's smooth sailing because I think it's a difficult process regardless of whoever's doing it. It's just very intense and very expensive. But what was
Yes.
that like? What was that like for you? Like, how did Missouri State come about? Like, just talk me through that.
Yeah, so that's another great question. For me, I would say it was inherently a little challenging because, I was playing catch up. So some people, which is crazy to me, like I've had mentees at this point who were like first and second years in undergrad and know what IO is and are, they come to me and they ask, how do I get, you know, LinkedIn set up? And so I put them in a lab. And looking back, I'm like, man, if I had started that when I was a first or second year, ooh wee.
Yeah. Oh, you
But
said like freshmen in
yeah.
college are doing that. Oh,
Oh
that's
yeah, like sorry. I'm thinking
okay.
like grad school. Yeah.
Yeah.
Freshman and sophomore in college, knowing
Okay.
what IO is and like in an IO psychology lab.
Wow. So they're
Yeah.
starting early. Okay, that's very
Yeah, they're
competitive. I can see
yeah.
getting more.
Yeah, they getting it in. They're getting more
Right.
competitive. Yeah. It's so interesting. But
Yeah.
and we could talk more on that. We'll circle back to that too. 'Cause, like I
Mhm.
said, a lot of universities might not even have an IO psychology class, might
Yeah.
not have an IO psychology lab. You can get into other psychology labs and then leverage what you did for
Hmm.
your materials and all that. But circling back to your question, I had to play a little bit of catch up because by the time I got into IO, I was almost out the door of my undergrad. So
Mm, yeah.
I spent some time in a cognitive psychology lab and then a IO psychology lab. And, I took a gap year in between graduating undergrad and starting my master's. And in that time, that gap gave me more time to do research, which
Hmm.
boosted the competitiveness of my CV. And it also allowed me to get more course oriented experience. So I took more graduate statistics level courses in that gap year. And I also had the opportunity to work as well. So that gap year was very effective for me. I was able to leverage it well because it gave me more research, which is like the primary indicator of success in your
Yeah.
CV when you apply. That applied experience. So again, with the scientist practitioner model, I can speak to what's going on in the organizations. And the third thing, the grad stats helped, I think.
Why you say grad stats? I get a lot of comments on my videos like, do I have to be really good at stats? Do I have to be good at math? Like X, Y, Z? And I'm like, it's okay. You can relax a bit because you're gonna learn. Like you
Yeah.
just need to have more of a. And I feel like when we were in our master's program, we went through the same. Like some people, it's not that everybody was a genius in stats. There's always going to be a stat person in the class, but it was more so it wasn't hard to learn, if that makes sense, as long as you applied yourself and paid attention.
Yeah.
So, taking, was stats ever something that was like, oh, I don't know if I'll be good at it, X, Y, and Z, and how much do you think you have to come in? You obviously need to take like a stats class in undergrad and all of that, but how much of it do you really think you need to have ingrained prior to joining a graduate program?
You really, you coming in with these like burners, like, okay. All right. So first question, the reason why I call it grad stats is because the quality of statistics related information that you learn typically, I know broad sweeping generalization, but typically in undergrad is like a drop in the bucket compared to what you learn in grad school.
Hmm.
So the reason I say grad stats is because, that qualitative difference in knowledge accumulated between the two levels of coursework.
Hmm.
Obviously, the grad stats was more akin to what we learned in our master's and PhD programs, so better prepared for that. I don't think you need, as an undergrad, to be a stats whiz, right? To have taken two, three, four, five stats and methods classes by the time you apply. But I do think it is important to note that IO psychology is one of the branches of psychology that is like really, where stats is important. Like stats and methods
Hmm.
matters. So
Yeah.
the more of that you can have, the better off you're just going to be. I can't say I was necessarily apprehensive about stats. I know some people are. You'll see it as a scary thing. I think I'm just gonna chalk that up to me being me. Like I don't really think about that stuff. Sometimes I'm like, I just know what I need to do, and the
Yeah.
stats class is it. Like I just
Yeah.
gotta. That's just what I gotta get done to get where I want to be. But
Yeah.
I've seen it firsthand for sure in others, and I guess maybe I had my moments in my PhD program where I was like, do I know what I'm talking about? But yeah, you more often than not, you probably know what you're talking about at least a little bit. But yeah, like I said, the more of
You'll
that you
learn
can
it.
have, yeah, whatever you don't know, you're gonna learn.
You're gonna
Just
learn.
understand though, you're gonna have to be open to feeling uncomfortable
Yeah.
with your knowledge base at points.
And you have to be open to just applying yourself to it because that's the part
Yeah,
of even being in a PhD program. You have to apply yourself or at a master's program. But,
practice.
I do think I will say, especially at our master's program, Dr. Vizio did a really good job teaching us, and Dr. Buchanan, because she was also she was a part person we took stats from. I think they both did
Right.
a really good job. It made it very simple enough to follow and understand, right? Like when you will
Yeah.
use these certain principles and not. So
Yeah.
I guess
And
that may differ program to program, but I think we got a really good training in Missouri State.
I agree with that. And I just thought of something, as you were saying that, and this kind of gets touches more deeply on what I was saying before, which is there are concepts that you may not even cover at the undergraduate level, like validity. So I just taught my first IO Psych class in person this past spring, and I had to take them through validity, and it took like multiple weeks to scratch
Yeah.
the surface of that. Excuse me,
Yeah.
but you know, if they were to apply to a master's or a PhD program, then they at least know they've heard of validity before. Whereas if you had just taken like an intro psych stats and methods class, you might not make it past, I don't know, correlation, maybe regression.
Yeah.
So it just helps.
But you learn it. You
But
learn it when you get there. So it's nice. It's nice to understand prior to getting there. But and I
yeah,
would encourage if you can, like ask, do learn it a little bit, but you don't have to know it going in because you're gonna learn it when you get there. So
yeah. And we
yeah,
were well prepared
yeah,
during our master's program. So
yeah.
do know that. Actually, so one comment on that actually, and so here at Albany SUNY we have master students and PhD students, and the students often take a lot of the same classes aside from stats, and the master students actually learn applied stats earlier than the PhD students do. So, you know,
Oh, that's interesting.
just highlighting some of the differences you might run into, which makes sense. It's 2 years versus 5 or 6, and they have to
Right.
hit the field much earlier than we do,
Yeah,
especially
that's
if they
true.
work for an organization. So,
Yeah, 100% true.
yeah, trying to tear down those barriers between, sometimes people have self-imposed or other imposed preconceived notions about masters versus PhDs. So, just
Yeah,
trying to break that down. Don't do
yeah,
that.
yeah. 100%. So, so Rico, what would you say going through your graduate program? This Missouri State and at SUNY. Where have you think your main, like, where do you think you've grown the most? Right, the most opportunity you had coming in, and now the challenges that you had. But like, where do you think you've kind of, well, what were those challenges, and how have you dealt with them? I would say.
Okay, challenges. So, my biggest challenge, and Jess knows this, my biggest challenge is doing too much and
Yes.
spreading myself
Oh,
too thin.
wait a minute, y'all. Before
Uh-oh.
we go, we talk about medical school. Let me tell y'all, we were
Uh-oh.
finishing up our master's program, and this man sits here and tells me, "Yeah, after I get my PhD, I think I'm just gonna go ahead and go to med school." And y'all, I looked at him and I was like, "Are you crazy? Like, first of all, like you need to get through the PhD program, and then." Yeah, leave that dream behind. Anyways, I probably wasn't the best supporter of that dream, but I was just like, no, Rico, you need to not be a forever student and like work towards getting out there.
Yeah, we try to we try to wrap this up. School
Anyway,
is cool.
sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead. I'm sorry. I
Yeah,
just had to say that because it's so true, like how you think. But yeah.
yeah, it is true. But yeah, get to the other side. Like I'm very different. Perspective change. Yeah, that's one thing. I'm ready to be done, so I can start living my
Yeah.
life. Friends are getting married and having kids and all that, and I'm like, I'm in school.
Yeah.
But you don't rush those things. But anyway, so shoot, I got distracted.
You said your biggest challenge was doing too many things.
Yes, thank you. So, and it really boils down to being aware of where your limits are and also time management. I think those are two different things. Sometimes you have to be a little bit more honest and realistic with yourself to understand what your limits are, how much bandwidth you really have to offer from moment to moment, week to week, et cetera, et cetera. And then managing your time effectively with the bandwidth that you have. And the bandwidth, will ebb and flow, right? But I had to learn, I had to learn what my limits were, and I pushed them very frequently, sometimes for better and worse results, and, better time management skills. But it's also still something I struggle with. I've even gotten that feedback in my PhD program. Because I was always, so I think Jess knows this. When I was doing my master's, I was working for an organization remotely. So when I was back in St. Louis, when I was, doing that gap year and all that stuff to prepare, I was working for an organization through recommendation of a colleague, and I was doing actual IO work. And so once I left, they were on board with me continuing that work. And this was before remote work was a thing, I guess. Everybody does it now. But to have a part-time job and an assistantship and be doing your master's at the same time, that's too much.
Yeah, you go.
That's legitimately that's a full-time job basically, and school during the daytime where you have to. It's 10 a.m. and you're in stats class with your professor talking stats things. Don's coming to mind. But anyway, love to death. So, just learning how to manage that was my biggest challenge. One of my biggest challenges. Mm-hmm. Another barrier that I faced, I think, was being able to have some certain conversations with faculty. So, you're going to need faculty for a lot of things before, during, and after, right? Mm-hmm. So when you're partnering with faculty, whether it just be time in their lab or, they put you on game to some sort of applied opportunity, whatever it is, big or small, you just want to be able to ask the questions to be able to have very clear expectations set on what it is for you, that you're going to do, what you're going to receive, and, what things are going to look like afterwards. Mm-hmm. And, for example, if it's a temporary, let's say they're not your primary advisor, right? If it's a temporary event, you want to, again, set the ground early, expectations about what it's going to be, what you're going to be doing, what you're going to get. But then on the back end, when you put that on your CV, circle back and have a conversation with them. Just say, hey, look, this is my interpretation of what I did for you. Is this also how you interpreted what I did for you?
Yeah.
Because, there are two different perspectives there. And you may see it as, you're doing a whole bunch of things and they're not there watching you, right? So they might not even be aware of all the things that you're doing to get to this end product.
Yeah.
Right. So having those conversations early, just so both individuals know what's going on, also very important. Yeah. That I had to learn in a few cases.
Yeah. Okay. What advice, building on that, would you have for incoming student to graduate school? Like, what advice would you give them? I mean, you kind of talked about it a little bit, but do you have any?
Yeah, I do. And I made notes for this. Yeah, like this I would be very clear on. So, because I want y'all to be successful. Like, I mean, Jess will agree. This is, whether you do a master's or a PhD, it can be difficult, right? Especially if, you're doing something, you're a first generation, either undergraduate or graduate student. I feel like first generation graduate student, that doesn't get talked about a lot or enough. Mm-hmm. But if your parents can't relate to, if your support network can't relate to this grad school thing that you're doing, that might be an area where you struggle a little bit, or you may need to fill that gap some other way. Yeah. And so I will touch on that. That's not my first one, though. My first one is be proactive. So this is a little easier for me because, as just noted earlier, I'm a little more interpersonally oriented. So my first, couple years here at Albany SUNY, I was working with all the faculty on projects, just figuring things out. But that I saw that as a tool to leverage, right? Everyone has different knowledge, skills, etc. And they want to help you
Hmm.
succeed. Or at least they should. That's why they're there,
Yeah.
right? Other than doing research for themselves, but they're there for
Majority
the
of them want to help you. You might have
yeah,
some that get caught in their own ego, but majority of them want to be there for you.
yeah. And so, don't be afraid to go and ask them questions, or if they have opportunities, or just have a conversation. I will drop in. If your door is open, I'm dropping in. And sometimes, again, that's another point of clarification you may have to work on because not everybody likes that. And people
Yeah.
will tell you, right, if you need to set up something in advance or not. But sometimes just those organic conversations can lead to very productive outcomes that you didn't anticipate. So just being proactive and connecting with folks, whether they be faculty, undergrads, grads, I mentor at various levels. But meeting the other graduate students at your university, very important. Getting those diverse perspectives keeps you grounded and also just builds that support system because they're going through the same thing. My folks over in the BNS, right, or cognitive or social, my clinical folks, we're doing different types of research. That's a fact. But when we both have a hard day,
No,
we can
it's
look at each
like,
other like, yeah, you know what I'm talking about. You know what I'm saying? Yeah.
yeah.
So that's my first thing. Be proactive, though,
Hmm.
in connecting. And also, I guess this piggybacks off of that, but in building your team. So, you got your personal team, right? You got your family. You've got maybe friends and connections you establish there that give you those personal resources that you're going to need to get going. But build your professional network as well. That's part of your team. And they can be internal to the university or external to the university. For example, my dissertation committee, I have someone who's on there who's not from my university at all, right? And so that's just going to be more opportunities to leverage, resources to leverage for your own success. So be targeted when you're building your professional and personal team. That work-life balance, I'm sure y'all knew that was coming when I told you my biggest challenge was doing too much. Figure that out. Whether that's, if you got to sit down every Sunday and plan things out for yourself so you really know what's going on, then do that. And as a part of that, do some fun things, like have a hobby.
Yeah.
So Jess probably remembers I was a racquetball. Well, I'm still a racquetball. I switched to squash, actually. Um, but that's another conversation. But, so that was my thing. Like I was in the gym. And if I wasn't working out, I was playing, racquetball. And that was my outlet. So if you don't have a hobby, find one,
Find a
whether
hobby.
that's reading a book or whatever. So,
Even if you're watching this video and you are not looking into IO Psych, you just curious because you thought Rico was cute or something. Look, let me tell y'all, find a hobby regardless. That will help you through a lot of things. Like it can't underestimate how much that is important just to have in life in general.
yeah,
Because it
honestly.
keeps you, it takes your mind off a whole bunch of stuff that life be throwing at you. I
Yeah.
did
And the
want to
last one,
go
okay, go
ahead.
ahead. Okay, so last one, and this is almost as important as being proactive. And I guess they go hand in hand. Have those conversations early with your advisors or your fellow faculty about what you want to do. You don't have to have your plan figured out in your first couple years there because things change,
Hmm.
always change. But at least if you can say, I'll give you two different examples. If you say, faculty, I don't really know what I want to do yet, how can you support me in figuring that out? They will do that. Or if you say, faculty, I know I want to go applied or I know I want to go into academia, how can we work towards me accomplishing that goal? And then they can start feeding you projects and resources to support you doing that thing, especially if
Hmm.
it's for academia, because you got to get started on that early.
Yeah, all those pubs. Gotta push them out.
Hey,
Oh god. Oh my gosh. I wanted to ask you though, Rico, because I know you just went through your proposal, dissertation proposal,
yeah,
and I'm sure you got some feedback, which was probably like, "Oh my God, here we go." But part of being in grad school in both a master's and in a PhD is feedback, and it will humble you. You learn, how did you handle that? Because I'm sure there's some people that come in, they're like, dang, I thought this was good. Like, what is the problem here? Like, how have you navigated through, those moments where you're like, oh man, I thought this was all right, and now I just, yeah, like, how have you dealt with that?
Yeah. So in the moment, be in the moment, try to take as much time as you can to like pause because you're going to have a lot of information coming at you all at once, right? So I had a committee of four, and everybody's asking questions, and some questions you might have been prepared for, some not, and it can feel overwhelming very quickly. So especially if something you thought was clear, they ask for clarification,
Yeah.
and then you're sitting there, you're like, I thought what I said.
Hey, I thought you said to do this, and I did this. Like, what is the problem? Yeah, I
Yeah,
got
yeah. So,
that.
you know,
Yep.
yeah, and then you get caught off guard, right? You're like, what is happening?
For real.
Yeah. So, in those moments, there were several for me. Like, there was one where I was using like effectiveness and quality, not interchangeably, but almost interchangeably. And they were like, "So we talking about effectiveness or quality, and how you measure that?" And we were going through the measures, right? And they were like,
Yeah.
"So is this the effectiveness or the quality?" And I was like, "Tee it up. We got to clarify this real quick." So yeah, and that's good feedback though as well. Like maybe
Hmm.
that was something that maybe I am using it interchangeably and it's confusing.
Hmm.
And so what they're really trying to do is prepare you. They're giving you the perspective of A, trying to make your project better, but B, the reviewer perspective, right? Especially if you're going
Hmm.
academic. You're
Yeah.
likely going to try to either publish this work or some similar work later. So they're asking you questions to poke holes the same way the reviewers are going to. So it can only make your
Yeah.
work better, which is the second part, right? Try to keep that in your mind. They're just trying to help you. They're not trying to hurt you, even if it might feel hurtful at the time, because it's
Yeah.
just so much feedback, and you're like, yeah, I thought I was out here styling, So just try to take it with a grain of salt. Step back, and always ask for a moment to pause and like process. If you're asking a question and you don't really know, you got to think. That's cool. Or just say, thanks for providing me with that feedback. I'm going to think on that, or I'll talk to my chair about that, and we'll circle back. Or maybe that's outside the scope of this project, and I can use that on my manuscript version of the dissertation.
Yeah.
One of those is going to work,
Well, yeah.
whatever you
Yeah.
just heard.
Yeah.
So yeah, and then afterwards, disconnect. Like I came home and no, I had to go pick up my car because it was in the shop. And then I went over to like this chicken spot and got some chicken and waffles. And I came home and I sat on the couch and I ate them chicken and waffles. And I was like, it's a wrap for me. And I, passed out on the couch at some point, woke up at like 12:30, and I was like, I needed that. I was like, I needed that
It's
for real.
stressful. You did. Yeah, you got to do that. I 100% agree with it. And
Yeah.
when I think about when I've gotten feedback, I actually just welcome it because I'm like, I already know they're going to have something to say. So I just go in with that expectation and then just like, where's the, like, and I think it is helpful because it does make your work better. It does make you clearer on what it
Yeah.
is you're trying to say, and it does give perspective in the sense of maybe I am not communicating in the way that I intend to, and there's need to reshape that. So 100%
Yeah.
agree with that. And
Or the,
honestly, go ahead.
oh, no, go ahead.
I was gonna say it's a good thing, right? When you can just get better work, and I always think two minds are better than one. I always stand on that. I would 100% rather do any type of project with people than on my own, which I was
Yes.
different when I was in my master's program. But now that I'm in the role that I'm in, 100% want teamwork. Like
Yeah.
I'd rather take that approach versus doing it on my own. Yeah, a lot of
Big
differences.
facts.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I was just going to comment on, how I guess those things together, like I said, the time to process and then making things better. When I woke up the next morning, I had processed all that feedback and I was already thinking of like new things, right? Like new future projects,
Yeah.
new approaches, new things to do for my study too, because I'm doing two study dissertation. And I was like, they got me. I was like, they got me, man. Yo, that was nice, y'all. Y'all accepted me and I appreciate that.
So, in a
So
nutshell, eat some chicken and waffles, go to sleep, and you'll wake up feeling a lot better. That's all you got to do.
yes.
That's all
And
you
please
got to
get
do.
the hot sauce.
And get the
Quality hot
hot
sauce.
sauce. Yeah, there
Yeah.
you go.
Just that's what I'm talking about. There's this one bottle that I use. or
I
one
have
brand? Yeah,
I've navigated from American hot sauce, So my husband, you know, he's Trinidad and Tobago, but y'all watching
yeah.
may not know this. He's from Trinidad and Tobago. He's not Trinidad and Tobago. He's from Trinidad and Tobago, and he has put me on this pepper sauce called Bertie's.
Bertie's. How do you spell that?
Bertie's pepper sauce. B E
I'm gonna write
A
that
R
down.
T I E S. Yeah, check
TES.
check that out because that is some good food, some good sauce there. Get that
Okay.
sauce because you gonna. It's very hot. I mean, I really love some hot, and that is hot
Yeah.
and it's tasty. So
Okay.
versus
Well,
like
let me
American,
grab my steps then.
huh?
So with the Bertie's, y'all get two bottles. Y'all watching this? We're having a one-on-one conversation right now. Okay.
All right, all
You're gonna
right.
get the Bertie's, and then you also gonna get the Louisiana Trappies. That
That
Trappies
used
part
to
is
be my
important.
hot sauce,
See, that's the go-to. That's it.
but I've
Or the
I've
Bertie's.
noticed the difference though because what they use in
Mm.
like Ortiz and stuff, they're actually using like real pepper, like they're grinding it like with I think it's habanero peppers and then some other stuff they put in it. So it's
Okay.
coming more, from the earth, I would say. At least I like to think that
Yeah.
way. But with
Yeah.
the more Louisiana, I feel like you get more of a vinegar taste to it. It's
Mm.
stronger in that. And that's not to say vinegar isn't in the Berties, but it's stronger in that one. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, like Rico
Okay.
said, y'all battle it out and let us know. Which one do you prefer, Bertie's pepper sauce or Louisiana hot sauce? You let us know.
Ooh, yeah.
Comments.
Drop a comment in the below section. Who's
Yeah.
winning? I want to see
Right,
that.
exactly. So Rico, we have gone on for about 40 minutes and I have like
Okay.
one more question. I'm
Okay.
probably gonna do like a one part, two part of this because this is a great conversation. I'm really happy, we're having it.
Yeah.
But you're obviously, a black man in
Yes.
industrial organizational psychology, which has been definitely more homogeneous.
Yeah.
Although I
Yeah.
will say there are a lot more efforts, I would say that the field is trying to make to get it more diverse and such. But,
Yes.
has there been, any moment throughout your time so far, right? And there may not have been, but that you think your color or your background, your unique individual background came into play and could have, impacted, your studies and all of that, or how people have perceived you wanting to work with you. Like, how do you think that's ever come out, or what do you think there?
Ooh, the layers. The layers. Okay. So I'll speak broadly to impact first because I think I didn't know it was not always something that it wasn't always at the forefront of my mind across some spaces. When I was an undergrad, I very much knew that I was one of few, and it makes everything very salient. But
Mm-hmm.
at the same time, I was blessed enough to have one of my mentors, who was also in my field, who was also African American. That's not common. I just talked
Mm-hmm.
to a recent graduate within the last couple of weeks, and she was saying she's never had a African American faculty member, like instructor, teach her
Mm-hmm.
class. And I was like, yeah, I got
Wow.
really lucky because I had several in undergrad.
Yeah.
But I think for me, it was more so being in spaces in grad school and then realizing how nice it was when I had a faculty of color because they
Mm-hmm.
can relate. And, sometimes it's you have to go without it to realize how important it is. And that was
Mm-hmm.
sort of my experience. Now, speaking to work, I don't I'd have to think about that one more. Maybe that'll be in the part two. I can start off with this, but
Well, this is.
I.
I'm gonna break this video into part one, part
Oh
two.
yeah,
Yeah.
okay, all right. So I need to finish. I need to finish. All right, all right.
It's
So
okay. I mean, but Rico, it's okay if you don't. Like, it's just some questions I've gotten before. So if you don't, it's okay. But if you do, like, you can also
yeah,
give your advice on it as well, how to handle that. So go ahead, continue.
yeah.
Sorry.
So I've no, you're good. So from that I know of, I don't think it's been a major player in projects and working with others.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I think part of that is because I am very interpersonally oriented and I am proactive.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I can have conversations with a lot of different people. So if I had a conversation with you and you had your own feelings about who I am or how I look, after that conversation, you're probably gonna feel differently about,
Definitely.
at least me or, the group of people that I come from, right? So
Mhm.
I think that's been something that I've been able to leverage in those situations is being willing to just have conversations. And if it goes well, then, it's all good. There are other issues with that though, because like people will start to see you as unique. You know this is what the
Yeah.
literature says, right? Like
Yeah.
they'll start to isolate you from the rest of the group. They're like, he's not African American.
He's not
He's
like
too
that.
he's just Rico, right? Like, nah, bro, I'm
Oh, I
black.
just no, listen, I just remembered. I won't blast who this person was or anything, but I remember you probably I don't know if you remember it, but you told me this,
Oh,
how someone
oh,
stepped to you in our master's program and asked
oh,
you if they could say a certain word
oh
and you
yeah.
were not like and yeah, so that is things like that.
Woo, yeah. They were like, we're cool, right? I was like, you
Not
got to
that cool.
stop. Yeah, like, too much.
No.
Like, yeah.
Yeah.
I will. Wow. Yeah, that was back recess of my mind. Yeah, that did happen. And I did
It
tell them
did.
no. And 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 it was cool though, right? Like after that, it wasn't weird, right? It wasn't like we never spoke again after that. In the moment, we had a conversation about it. I was like, I don't really think I'm okay with that. Um, I appreciate you for asking ahead of time instead of just saying it. That was probably for the best. But yeah, no. And we were friends after that, so it was all good.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, I forgot that
Hard
part.
conversations to have because our program brought in a lot of people from more of the Midwest area. And so a good amount of them, I don't think had a lot of experience with Black people at all, honestly. Not all of them, of course, but I think a
Yeah.
good amount of them were not as comfortable around Black people. And that was just the type of environment that it was. So it's good that you were able to have that conversation with that person because there probably was a bit of education that needed to come behind that. Like they probably just saw that, oh yeah, all the cool people say that or some
Yeah.
nonsense like that without understanding, the meaning behind it and all of that. So
Yeah. Implications.
exactly. Like
Yeah.
this is not a shared word here. This is yeah. So
Yeah. But also, I will say, just my parents always like keep your head on a swivel. But if you can observe people's behavior and see, and that will inform you of everything you need to know, right? If you need to approach some
yeah.
people more cautiously, or approach certain individuals with support, if you observe how other people interact across individuals of different backgrounds, that may help you navigate your personal spaces
Yeah.
more easily.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, Rico, I have asked all of my questions, so I'm so
Okay.
thankful you were able. But before we go, I have one final question.
Okay.
What is the one piece of advice you will give to people pursuing this field? You've given a lot of great advice throughout the video, but if it's just one thing that you want people to walk away with as they're considering IO psychology and where they want to go with their career in IO, what would that be? Check the
All
notes.
right. So my one piece of advice is, dang, be be proactive really gets a lot done. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah.
Like, even if you just shoot your shot, like send an email to a faculty member that you don't know, and you say, "Hey, I'm so and so. Just want to introduce myself. I'm interested in the field. Is there any information you can give me, or words of wisdom you can provide to help me navigate or pursue this career?" Most people will respond positively to that. Granted, have somebody else read that email first, just to make sure.
Yeah.
Like, because professional etiquette is important.
Mm-hmm.
Not everybody will let you know that they felt some kind of way about an email they received. They just will start treating you different, right? So
Yeah.
always have, as Jess said, multiple heads are better than one. And if you're interested in this field, start with PsyOp. That website will get you very, very far. It'll show you all the universities that have programs. They have various tools and resources about just learning more about what IO psychology is. So if you're interested in IO psychology, start with the PsyOp website. And as you start to develop these questions, find an IO psychologist. And if you don't know one, cold call one. Cold email one.
Yeah,
Yeah. And it's
you just do it.
and it'll be
That's
good
what I
for you.
think.
Yeah.
Yeah, just
Just do
reach
it.
out.
You can send me you can send me an email if you want. I don't
Yeah,
have
well,
a
y'all heard it here now. He's open. You can shoot him an email. He is honestly, and he probably is one of the best people to reach out and know in this field. I mean, Rico is a really great thought partner and a really pleasant person to work with, and he obviously knows what he's talking about. So whenever you all, want to chat with him, and also, eventually he gonna be a professor, so get
Hey,
acquainted with his
hey.
research. And we didn't even get a chance to cover your research interests, but very quickly, what are your
Oh,
research interests? So people know when they start applying to you to want to work with you.
right. Yes. Yeah, we didn't even there's probably so much that we didn't even get a chance to touch on. But that's a hallmark of a good conversation, right? It just flows and we go with it. So
Mhm.
my research relates to training and development and slash learning. So, for example, right now my dissertation is on informal learning, which is a very different process from training and development. Formal training. I also look at cybersecurity, and so something we didn't get to touch on today, I think, is how intersectionality is growing. So, for example, there was like maybe one session on cybersecurity at PsyOp this year, and it almost didn't happen in the first place. And so, but that's a burgeoning area, right? There are ads popping up all on Hulu and stuff right now about how cybersecurity is a growing field and so many jobs go unfilled annually. And I'm like, all right, perfect for my research
Yeah.
because I got you. And even I just got feedback from my dissertation proposal. One of my committee members does cybersecurity research, and he was saying, psychological safety and turnover are two things that are really big in cyber, and I didn't know that prior to my proposal, right? So, yeah, learning slash training development assessment. I didn't touch on that, but we don't have time for that. Informal learning, yeah.
All right.
And
So
financial
y'all,
insecurity, because that's important, especially after COVID. People understand money matters
yeah,
when you don't have it.
yeah,
Yeah. So I
yeah.
haven't had a chance to collect good data on it yet, but I'm working on it.
Okay. So y'all hear what he's working on. He's doing some really great stuff. So feel free to reach out. I'll put his contact details that he's most comfortable sharing in the description below. And yeah, thank you all. Thank you all for watching. Thank you, Rico, for joining and sharing your perspectives and sharing your story. I really appreciate it. I'm sure everybody that's watching this can appreciate it as well because it's unique to you, and some people may be able to resonate with it and take that on. So yeah,
Well,
thank
thank you
you
for
for
having
that.
me.
Mhm.
Oh, yeah, no problem. I'm happy to, mentorship and access to information is so important. So I appreciate you doing this for all the people that might be interested in psychology or something similar or something different, right? Even
Yeah.
if it's just for grad school, right? Which we didn't even get to touch on that
We
process
didn't.
specifically, but,
Yeah.
just thank you for doing this for the people. Thank you for
Yeah.
having me. So,
Of course, Rico. Thanks for joining. Thank you all for
yeah.
watching, and we'll catch you all on the next one.
All
Bye.
right. See ya.